You're the auditor, right?
Yes, sir.
Oh, yes. You are vital. Oh, right, I didn't got that one. Right, is that how shit, everyone else, you good.
Yeah, you do.
Can you hear us, Lori?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can.
Great.
Turn that volume up so that. All right, are we ready to begin?
10:30.
All right, so our first part of this workshop is we have asked Lori Mann from Line Barter to help explain to us the reason why our current tax rate is where it's at. And this is an email. Let me see if I can get this up. This is the email that I sent her, and it shows the tax information for the last 5 years or so. It's kind of small. You can see that. But anyway, Lori, the floor is yours. We ask that you can tell us about our current tax rate.
Yes, sir. So if you don't mind, I was going to share a PowerPoint presentation.
Sure.
All right, give me 1 second. So I can't share on the screen, but if someone will try to enable that, I can kind of go through the.
He's going to give you access so that you will be able to share.
Yes. There we go. Perfect. Thank you. Okay. And you should be able to see my screen now.
Yeah. Uh-huh. You want to start the slideshow?
Yes, sir. All right. Can you see the slide?
Oh, sorry. Hold on. Gotta get it down on my screen. All right.
Okay.
Proceed. We are ready.
Great. Thank you. All right. So I just wanted to first talk about what the different benchmark tax rates are in the truth in taxation process, so we can see why those rates are coming out higher this year than your last year's adopted rate. Okay. So if we can just go over some of the broader concepts, and then I'll kind of drill into more of the details of what's happening exactly to your rates.
All right.
So first we have the no new revenue rate. And that is a calculated rate that brings in, take into consideration last year's levy using current year values. So that's a rate that could trigger potentially some hearing requirements. It's not how far you can go up. But despite what its name is, the no new revenue rate, it often will bring in more revenue than last year because of new improvements. New improvements are, say you were building an office building last year, it didn't get completed last year, but now it's on the roll for 2024. That's considered a new improvement. So even though it says the no new revenue rate, it will often bring in more revenue from those new improvements. All right. So this is a little bit more complicated definition of the no new revenue rate, the actual calculation. So we're looking at last year's levy divided by current year taxable value. But we can see on either side of that fraction is we have those deductions in red. So we have minus lost property, and lost property is,
You're not advancing your slides.
oh, let's see. It should say, you should see, hopefully it says no new revenue rate, last year's levy. Has a big arrow.
No, I don't think I can click on it, but I will go try. Cause I think it's her screen. Yeah. Oh,
So it should have like a big arrow to the right. There's a big arrow pointing over.
you know what may have happened is it may be, well, I don't know if you've started the slideshow, but it may be going off to another screen.
Oh, I see.
Why
Okay.
we're not seeing it, but all we're seeing is your title slide. We're not seeing, and then the sidebar has the other slides. So there we go. There we go.
Yeah, I just had to adjust the setting. Thank you for letting me know. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Okay, so we have the no new revenue rate, which is going to be last year's levy, but we have to make an adjustment for lost property. Lost property is property that was taxable last year, but not taxable this year. So say, my big example is always like, say you have a strip mall last year that was taxable, but you have a church that moves into that strip mall this year, that is lost property. You don't have that taxable value anymore. Then we divide by current year taxable value and we minus out new property, which we already talked about is that new property on the roll. We didn't have it last year. Okay. So lost property for you guys it's going to become a very important issue with your tax rate. All right.
Okay.
And the reason why we make those two deductions on either side is because according to the Texas Constitution, they want to do an apples to apples comparison of looking at the properties, the value was there last year and the value that was here this year. So that's why we make the lost property deduction from the last year's levy. And then we make the deduction for the new improvements on the current year value. So on the left side of the screen, we have lost property. Remember, property that's no longer taxable this year. And that ends up reducing your no new revenue rate. And that's exemptions that we talked about with the church and the strip mall, but also say things that were at market value last year, but have a special ag valuation this year. People call it an ag exemption, but special valuation for ag. On the right side, we have our new property that everybody kind of talks about. That's that additional monies that come in from new improvements that ends up increasing your no new revenue rate. So that's that new improvements, like the office building, but also any of that business personal property that's in the building as well. All right, next. So when we're making these adjustments, they can either make your rate higher or lower, right? Depending on where they are for either in last year or the current year. And the higher your last year levy grows, the bigger the rate. And the easy example I give people is think about 1/5 versus 2/5. You can kind of look at that number and eyeball those fractions and go, which one's higher, right? Which one is worth more, right? The one that has the 2/5, the one that has the bigger top number, bigger numerator. For the bottom of the fraction, our current year taxable value, it's the opposite is true. It's that seesaw that everybody talks about when they talk about truth in taxation. As our values rise, our tax rate goes down, right? And we can see that when we look at 1/5 versus 1/4. As that bottom number has gone down, then our rate goes higher. As the bottom number goes higher, our rate goes down. So 1/5 versus 1/4. All right, so this is your no new revenue rate. And these are the ones that make sense when you just kind of look at them. We have last year's tax rate for the general fund and the special road to bridge fund on the top row. All right, that's y'all's last year's adopted rates. On your TNT worksheets this year, you can see your no new revenue rate for the general fund is lower than last year's rate, which makes sense when you have increasing values, right? As the values go up, your rate's supposed to go down. And the same with the special road and bridge. You had your 10 cents last year in current year values, because your values have gone up, your rate has gone down. That's the seesaw we talked about. And then the bottom row is your county no new revenue rate. That's just your general fund and special road and bridge no new revenue rates put together, right? So those make sense, right? When you're first looking at them. That rate has gone down from last year because of increasing values. Where it gets a bit complicated for you guys is when we're talking about the voter approval tax rate. So the voter approval tax rate, it's going to get you the same amount of M&O revenue as last year using current year values, but there's some different adjustments to it that are not in the no new revenue rate that we just talked about. So yeah, you add in your M&O refunds and everything, but if you can see, there's that fine asterisk at the bottom. You know how people love to put like little asterisk exceptions at the bottom. It says not adjusted for lost property. So your no new revenue M&O rate is not adjusted for lost property, but it is adjusted for new property. So it's not really an apples to apples comparison anymore. This was a recent change in the comptroller's TNT worksheets that happened in around 2020. So they took out the deduction for the lost property on the voter approval tax rate. And the other kind of yellow highlight you see up there is we have some additional adjustments to the no new revenue M&O rate, which includes indigent healthcare expenditures and county indigent defense. So these are M&O expenses that your county has had. And what the truth and taxation worksheets do is allow you to increase your no new revenue M&O rate just a little bit to help cover the increased expenses for those items. And then for the voter approval tax rate, you still have that growth of 3.5%. But we're not even going to talk about that because your rate is going to be growing already. So we're still talking about the voter approval tax rate, but just that one part is for the no new revenue M&O. You can see in your general fund, your last year's M&O rate was around 30 cents. For your no new revenue M&O rate on the worksheet, it's grown to 31 cents, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense if it's supposed to be decreasing with increasing values. But I'm going to explain why, okay? The same thing with your road and bridge, your special road and bridge. You had 10 cents last year. Now your no new revenue M&O tax rate is over 10 cents, but just a little bit. All right. So let's explain why those rates are increasing instead of decreasing with increasing values. On the left-hand side of the screen, we have our no new revenue rate calculation. And it's split up between general and special road and bridge. You can see we have a lost property value adjustment, that 66,817,569 number, right? And what that number does for both our general and special road and bridge is that it decreases last year's levy. If we decrease last year's levy, we're decreasing our rate, right? They're the same way. On the other side of the screen for the voter approval tax rate, there is no lost property adjustment. So you can see our values that we're using for last year are actually higher. So when we have increasing values, that increases our rate. To get a little bit more specific about what this lost property adjustment is doing to your rate, on the very far left of the screen in yellow, we have our no new revenue rate. And those are the rates that actually went down with increasing values. We have that lost property value of that 66.8 million that we talked about earlier. If you try to use that number, that value to come up with a lost levy, that's that fourth column, lost levy, just using last year's rate. So the lost levy divided by current year value has that rate ending up in green. So I'm just trying to figure out how much that lost levy is contributing to your no new revenue M&O rate. And it's not very big, right? It's just 0.004 for your general fund and 0.001 for your special road and bridge. Now, if you add on the yellow to the green and you get blue, you get your no new revenue M&O rate for your voter approval tax rate purposes. So it really is that lost property not being adjusted for in the voter approval tax rate. So this is our voter approval tax rate, no new revenue M&O. You can see on the first row, we have what your last year's tax rate was. And then under that, your no new revenue M&O rate, which is just taking into account last year's M&O rate with current year values, but no lost property adjustment. So you can see it's already increasing from your last year's M&O rate by 0.003. Then for your general fund, we have the indigent healthcare adjustment and the indigent defense adjustments, which by themselves, they're not a whole lot, right? Third or fourth decimal in. And then the middle green number, your no new revenue M&O adjustments, those are just your indigent adjustments added together. And then when you add those together to your no new revenue M&O, you get that 31 cents. So that's where the growth is coming from. One is your lost property not being deducted in your voter approval tax rate, which is required by the worksheet. And then two, your no new revenue M&O adjustments. Now that's a lot, right? That gets pretty complicated. So if I want to stop here and see if anybody has any questions, or do you want me to go back and explain any particular part?
So if I may, real quick, just a couple of good examples of the lost rate that we have here. If you remember, the city of Canton, ESD, took over a bunch of property around First Monday. And when they did that, that became non-taxable against your tax levy. And that was a big chunk of money right there. You also have this year, I can't remember the industrial park in Wills Point.
Off 80.
Off of 80, the one that Wills Point took over that industrial park because they failed to comply with what their agreement was. And that all went back to non-taxable value. So there's two giant tracts of land, two giant tracts of taxable value that now become a negative on your, tell me if I call it right, Lori, voter approval rate, your no new revenue rate.
Right, it's the voter approval tax rate, but the part of it that's called the no new revenue M&O rate.
And then that right there is why your levy's gonna stay the same or possibly grow due to that loss. Those are two specifics of major hits to the numerator, as she showed a few slides back, which will allow your rate to grow and your final dollar amount for your budget to grow while still staying underneath that NNR, the no new revenue rate, and the voter approval rate. So just specific examples that I was able to think of while we were talking.
Awesome.
But there's lots of little examples that happen too, that all get added up and become a part of why that numerator again drops. I told you earlier, I'm good with spreadsheets. A lot of that numerator dropped, but allows your rate and your ultimate levy to go up. Those are just specific ones there. I'm sorry, go ahead.
So that covers just the subject that I was asked about, was why our rates are higher than last year with value growth. And it's going to be your lost property adjustment and then your adjustments for your indigent healthcare, indigent defense. Those are
These are new changes that the legislature, or who actually implemented these changes?
So for the lost property change that happened in 2020, it was a comptroller change to their worksheet. They were trying to adjust the worksheet to reflect what the current law said, and it was a change from how it was handled for the last 20 years.
Okay.
The indigent healthcare adjustment has been in there for a very long time. The indigent defense adjustment was a recent law change in 2020 when they overhauled and everybody went down from 8% down to 3.5%. They added that additional adjustment in there.
What's the total value of the lost property?
66 million.
Yep.
$66,817,569.
Right, and then you can see on the fourth column in, that's the corresponding levy to that value.
And we've never factored this in before?
No, it's been an adjustment for on the worksheet. But how it's kind of shown up on your worksheet kind of differs each year, and maybe your current year value or some other adjustments would outweigh it. It just has become prominent this year. So if you had a lot of lost property,
I'm assuming this year was much higher than the prior years.
yeah, that's something that we would have to go and look at each worksheets in the prior year, but we can grab
Okay.
those. Yeah.
2023 was 51 million.
Was how much?
51 million in 2023.
And 66 million this year.
All right. I think we're ready to move.
Okay, well, that was kind of my big part of it, kind of answering that question why our rate is higher. The other kind of requirements I wanted to talk about, if you had time, is kind of some website requirements, but otherwise I was done with the major portion of it. Did you have any questions on the calculations besides what we talked about?
No, ma'am.
No, okay.
I don't, anyway.
All right. Good. And just while I have you guys captive, I just wanted to make sure that you all know about the website requirements that are out there for truth in taxation. And I know it seems kind of like I'm veering off topic, but I always want to make sure that my taxing units are updating the websites because that's the thing that taxpayers get the most information out of. And then there's also a new notice requirement too. So at the end of this, I can make sure to send over the PowerPoint to y'all. So of course, it'll be easier for you to look at all the information I provided, including all these requirements that have to be on your website. And then the notice of estimated taxes is kind of on the right corner there. That's the new website requirement that's started this year for the taxing unit. So last year, chief appraisers, or in prior years, chief appraisers would send out the postcard in August. So taxpayers could get a website to go to get the proposed rates. That is no longer a postcard. It's going to be a newspaper publication by the appraisal district, and they have to post it on their website. But y'all also have to post this notice of estimated taxes on your website as well. And then always please make sure to talk to the appraisal district or the county tax assessor collector to see whose information to put in there. But that's kind of my try to remind everybody of this new legal requirement that's come up.
What is the time frame on when that needs to be posted?
That's a great question. So it's not actually in law for when the taxing unit needs to post it on their website. But the chief appraiser needs to do the publication by August 7th or as soon as practicable. So I tell people to try to kind of mirror that same timeline.
Okay.
And then this is supposed to be so your taxpayers can get information before your hearing. So I always suggest at least 5 days before your tax rate hearing.
Okay.
Okay. And then we have an email address, and of course you have my personal one too for any additional questions. And I'll make sure to talk to the auditor as well about the items that they send over separately. So if there's anything else I can answer for you guys.
No, sir.
Lori, if it's all right, once we're out of the public meeting, I'll email the commissioner to the judge, make sure that they have your direct office line also.
Yes, please.
And I'll make sure our county auditor has it as well, in case there's any questions, you can go direct to the expert.
Yep, for sure.
Still got one more question.
Yes, sir.
So we determined that the lost property value only really changed by about 15 million compared to last time. I'm sitting here looking at the 2023 taxable value of 4.9 billion. And I'm looking at the 2024 estimated one at 6 billion. And I'm sorry, but 15 million don't make that gap up. And so I'm kind of confused as to how come our taxable value increased over $1 billion. And our justification for all this change is based on a $15 million difference in property loss.
Mhm,
I believe these numbers are before all the deductions.
mhm.
There's a lot of deductions that come out of the taxable values, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, sir. So, and then I flip back to the PowerPoint that shows what last year's values are adjusted. So you know, have to take out the freeze homesteads, there's court case adjustments, the lost property adjustments that we've talked about. So it was for last year's taxable value, we have about 4.6 for both of those. And then in the current year value, you can see on 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth column over is 4.6. So not that much higher once you make the deductions for the current year value for the frozen homesteads and then any of the new property.
Yeah, the 6 million drops to 4.6. 6 billion, I'm sorry.
I got a question just for educational purposes. How do you come up with the number of lost value? Where does that come from?
Yes, sir. That's going to be on line 10A and B. And that's a number that the appraisal district runs to see how much new exemptions have come on and how much new, sorry, not just 10, line 10 and 11. That's going to be the new exemptions that have come on, partial and absolute, and then also the value that was on market last year, but ag this year. So that's something that the appraisal district keeps track of.
And that's on line 10 and 11 of the comptroller's truth and taxation form.
Yes, sir.
So what would be the best response we would give our taxpayers as to why our tax rate went up? Because of the lost property?
Well, I mean, it depends ultimately at what tax rate that y'all are looking to adopt. If you want to adopt the no new revenue rate, which includes that deduction, you know, that's one thing. If you do want to look to adopt a rate that's the no new revenue M&O rate for the voter approval tax rate, then you can say, look, we have these adjustments because we have M&O expenses, right, for the indigent items, but also because there's property that was taxable last year, but not this year. So it is lost property, but I would not use those terms, right? They don't know what lost property is, but to make up for the items that are no longer taxable.
Any more questions? All right. Thank you so much, Lori.
All right, thank y'all.
Put the numbers out and we'll look forward to the PowerPoint presentation.
Yes, sir. I'll send it right on over.
Thank you for your work putting that together. I appreciate that.
Thanks.
Thank you, Lori.
All right. You have anything else to add, Richard?
I will say Lori is by far the expert on this.
Mm-hmm.
I do know, as I was explaining it earlier with Mr. Barton. These are ultimately, and I don't mean to make it sound trivial when I say this, but this is high school work math problems that are best explained in an equation.
Mm-hmm.
And as much as I love to pretend I'm an expert at math, I use spreadsheets for everything to make sure my math is correct and make sure everything's done right. The TNT worksheet changes every year to comply with the new laws that come out with each legislative session. As she said a little while ago, Lori said a little while ago, there's an emphasis on it this year. The calculation of it is a little different. How the new spreadsheets came out. you should. Even though, as Mr. Brad said, the calculation is $6 billion for the raw unadjusted market value.
Right.
When you add everything in, it actually drops it back to, from what I was seeing, about $20 million less than what your adjustment rate with the adjustments into it was last year. It looked like it was 4.62 something billion, and this year you're at 4.609 billion, so there's about a $20 million difference in there. And then ultimately, I'm gonna put this in the simplest terms I know, and Lori's probably gonna comment in a minute and tell me I went too simple with it or I explained it wrong. But the idea behind it is that your budget, your ultimate levy dollar, think of a bucket, and that your taxable value gets thrown in, and then your tax rate equals, between the two of them equals however much stuff you're able to put into your bucket, and that becomes your tax levy ultimately. Ultimately, when this is all done and said, it all adjusts to itself, even though there was a loss in the adjusted market value to it, it still adjusts between the two of them so that your bucket stays relatively the same with the 3% or whatever the allowed growth is, what it did last year to it, with that growth with all the adjustments on it to stay under that voter approval rate. So while it looks like everything's doing this, and when I say this, the bottom of your bucket, which is your market value, is adjusting, the tax rate adjusts with it to keep the levy, the total amount of what your bucket can have, to keep that full with the intended growth that the new revenue rate or approval rate allows into it. So there is a small growth in that. I think it's 3%, 3.something%. I'd have to have my tax rate with me, but to give you the precise bit. But you're still within that amount of growth within it, but all of that's added to it. Your loss levy, your new your lost property, your new value that has come onto it, that's a deduction too. And then, as we talked about several times, your indigent healthcare comes into it, and other little expenses and all go on there too, and that's been a big growth too. That's the county lawyer or the country lawyer version of a very complicated math equation.
Well, it also explains why you can't just take the total revenue you generate at the known revenue rate and multiply it by 0.035 to get your voter approved tax rate, because you're allowed a 3.5% increase, but that doesn't work because your voter approved rate is using a whole different base to start with.
That's right.
So that's why the two never work that way.
It's difficult, and I say this tongue in cheek.
And that's why I think it's 8% that we're getting. This increase says that we're getting 8%. I'm sorry.
I say this tongue in cheek, and God bless the county auditors who have to deal with county finance, because as a simple person, my mind instantly goes to, well, in my checkbook, I have X dollars and I need to use X dollars here. So if my electricity bill goes down, but my phone bill goes up, I'm gonna throw that money over there. And that's just a simple example of what you cannot do in government financing. Just as expenditures are very, very controlled and very delineated, the use of it, your income side of it is just as controlled and delineated and complicated as well. It's very, if I was to say anything to a voter, you have some what we tell our voters, and it's not to pull the wool over anybody's eyes at all, but it's remember that both sides of our entity's checkbook, both the income and the debit side of it, both sides of that are very regulated and very controlled by the legislator. And whereas we would love for it to be simple, X dollars in, X dollars out, this doesn't come, it all has to meet the requirements and the math that Austin throws at us. I happen to know that our auditors are very good at this, which is why I get to stay in the dark on that part of life.
So what you're telling us is, the last legislative session made some changes that's kicking in this tax year. And so your spreadsheets are changed to reflect that, which is why our numbers are coming out different than what we're accustomed to.
I believe so. I believe that's what we're saying.
So my concern is when the taxpayers get their taxes, their appraisals has gone up. And normally their rate goes down, so their taxes don't go up, but this year they're gonna have a higher tax rate. And they're gonna come and say, well, we need to vote on it. And how are we gonna answer them? Because, you know, it's supposed to be an automatic rollback election if you go over your rate from last
If it goes over the voter approval rate,
year. But the average citizen is not gonna change.
that's very true, and that's a hard education to understand, because again, you're thinking. I see this as a citizen, I'm thinking, I'm comparing it to my checkbook of if I get a raise, where did that raise come from, how does this come in? The truth is, you're still, the county didn't quote unquote get a raise, you're still managing to stay underneath that voter approval rate. Even though there is a little bit higher of a levy, and a little bit higher of a tax rate because of how that bucket is formulated. The answer is we're still staying under the voter approval rate, that we're still staying under what that automatic rollback election would be.
And I'll be honest with you, since we brought in that special road tax in 2018 at 10 cents. That rate has always dropped. With the effective tax rate at that time. It was always like 8 cents. This year it's over 10 cents. We've never seen that. Because we've always had to bring our levy up to 10 cents and then I lost. So this year we're gonna do the swap. We're gonna pull that special road tax back down to 10 and gain some of that money. I've never.
So all things
experienced
considered, will we face the same issue next year? Or will it depend on the lost property?
It will depend on what your exemptions wind up being again. Like I said, I do know of several major ones that hit this year. But it will depend on what your exemptions wind up being. It's very hard to predict that. I will say this, your county's growing. Zandt is growing. And that's always gonna be a factor into it. Your new growth into it as you go, your loss of gross or your loss of property is also a part of growing too. So it's hard to predict what growth is. I mean, I live just outside of Fort, and you would have predicted that for 5 years running, that would be the biggest growth in the city, our biggest growth city in America. So with that, my background, I'm very afraid to tell you what, or to try to predict what growth would be. Because it could all be coming this way next year.
How do we lose property?
How do you lose property?
You said the first Monday grounds and the Wilson Point, you said we lost that.
It became taken over by a non-taxing entity,
That's one. There's also exemptions,
ag exemptions.
freezes that jump in.
Right, okay, I understand those, but how do you lose the first one you said? I mean, you take the industrial park, it's still gonna get taxed.
None of it's brought underneath
The
the
city of Wills Point took it over.
entity.
They're a non-taxing.
There was a business, one example he used, there was a business in Wills Point that didn't fulfill all their obligations that were paying taxes. The EDC had to go in and get it.
I believe EDC was the funding for it under
Yes.
agreement that did certain things.
Actually, it wasn't that, actually, it was actually the EDC bought 40 acres of land and extended their park.
Okay.
So that 40 acres of land that was taxable last year now belongs to an entity that doesn't pay property tax. So that revenue doesn't come in anymore.
Like 40 under ag exemptions before they bought it.
It doesn't matter if they are or not, there's still a value up there.
I don't know for sure.
And what was the city of Canton took over, you said?
A bunch of properties surrounding the.
It's an ESD1.
Yes, sir. Surrounding the first Monday tree case. I know that was a large sum of money. I don't know the exact number. But I know it was.
You mean the Canton Economic Development took it over?
Economic development is tax exempt.
ESD three is what's around Canton.
Yeah.
ESD one segment.
Yeah, it
The tax exempt.
wouldn't be ESD.
I believe it was, what I have on my notes is that it was Canton's ESD.
No, it's economic development. That's what it is.
You know,
All right, so one more question. Will we use this same spreadsheet next year? I know there'll be variable change in the spreadsheet,
I
but we'll
believe
use the
so,
same
that
spreadsheet.
it'll be between the tax sheet or legislative year. It'll be that or probably consider, I don't know, I haven't done a study to see how often it changes the comptroller's spread or formula sheet. I haven't done a study to see how often that is, but considering that there's no laws going effect right now, I don't know that it would change, but it might.
So the spreadsheet comes from state controller's office.
Yes, sir.
That's who provides. it.
Yes, sir.
That's who make the change.
Yes, sir.
We didn't make the change.
No, sir.
Zandt County did not make these changes.
No,
The
sir.
state controller's office did. I'm saying that for a reason.
We are just following the law as it's corrected. All right, thank you, Richard.
I'm
Appreciate
happy
it.
to help, and I'll email all of you the worries number. As much as I'd like to say that I'm the expert on this, she really is, her and Blair, who works in our office. They do this every day, and much like the reason you go to a surgeon when you need something worked on, they have all the muscle memory and all the knowledge to be able to answer this.
All right. Very good. Ready to move on to item 2, which is to discuss the jail and courthouse options. So I guess those 2 discussions have to do, one with the courthouse grant that we received of $9.5 million. And the total cost that was calculated and used for the grant to do a total restoration for the courthouse is around just shy of $12 million. So that leaves us with approximately $2.5 million that the county will have to fund.
Thank you.
On the grant. Or on the total restoration. That is assuming that we come in under the cost estimates that have been projected. That what that also does not account for is the relocation costs that we would incur, because we would have to vacate the courthouse for 2 years. A minimum of 2 years if we go through with the restoration. And so there will be a significant cost for that relocation out and then back in. So I haven't had time to really put numbers together on what that should be. But I will in the future. But I think what Commissioner Barton said is we need to get voter approval. We need to get citizens of Van Zandt County to, instead of all 5 of us making that, or 4 of us at the present time, making that decision on our own, we need to do it. And I suggested that we have a public forum in which we address this with the citizens and let them give us their feedback and thoughts on how we should do it in that regard. I don't feel like with $12 million currently, it's gonna be at the end of this fiscal year, we're projecting $12 million to be in our general fund. And that 12 million is available for us to use for our share of the renovation work with the 2.5 million and the relocation costs. Again, don't have the specific numbers on what that or estimates on what that would be. But we could potentially, if the board agrees, and fund it without any kind of a tax a bond collection in that regard, or we could choose to go out for bond. I don't know how we want to do that. But anyway, that's the summary that I've got, and I'm willing to, yeah, I believe it is not the intent of any of the commissioners to turn down the grant of $9.5 million. Because of the additional costs that it would, that we would incur, but it gives us the opportunity to correct some deficiencies in the courthouse and also make it good to use for another, or at least 20 to 30 years before it would need additional modifications and repairs in that regard. And it would, the intent is to also give us additional office space and reclaim the space that we are currently using on the 4th and 5th floor strictly for storage, that we would have turn that into office space, and we'd move the jail cells out except for 1 or 2 in that regard. So that is the intent. That's where that the way that the grant read, that we wanted, why we wanted to do it. So we applied. So comments, feedback.
Yeah, there's 2 things that I don't understand. Number one, when we got all these plans 6 years or so ago, there was nothing about changing the 4th and 5th floor to remodeling it to office spaces and adding stairways. So that cost is no way it could be included in the little shy of $12 million. Second of all, I don't understand why we keep going down the road with unknown facts. We've got our plans. What are we waiting on? Let's go out for bids. Don't keep telling me a number that some architect says this is going to cost this much. We've got the plans. Bid it so you can come back and tell me how much it's going to cost, so we can tell the people. You can have a forum all day long and say, oh, we think it's going to cost $12 million, but you can't promise them it's going to cost $12 million. You can't promise them it's going to cost $12 million. I disagree with that totally. I say it's going to cost closer to $20 million than it is $12 million. And if you do that, if you plan on funding it out of your back pocket and you get into the middle of it and you don't have enough money, then you're too late. Then you're going to tuck your tail between your legs and go to the voter and say, hey, I messed up. Now I need a bond to get this done. And you got to wait for it all this time, or you're going to shove it down their throat and tell them, no, we're going to go out and do certificate of obligations. And they do not want us to do certificate of obligations. So let's get our cost. Let's put it out for bids. Let's find out what it is and let's move forward before we lose this $9 million. And tell them what it is up front. A hard, cold, solid fact. Here's a bid. The guy said he'll do it for this.
Which include everything.
Yes, sir. You certainly want to.
Yeah, I'm talking about the stairs.
Yes,
So they
yes,
didn't
sir.
include
There's nothing on your proposal, Andy, about turning them top 2 floors into office.
The current drawings have the floors being vacated of the jail facilities and used for storage. Okay, and that, when the estimated cost per square foot for this renovation is $356 per square foot. It's a renovation. Now, it doesn't make economic sense to put storage in the cost per square foot of that nature when you can move it off-site to another facility for under $100 a square foot. So in order to have people on the 4th and 5th floors, you have to have 2 exits, 2 stairwells. Right now, we have 1 stairwell that actually doesn't stop at the 4th floor. So that would be a simple fix to fix the current stairwell there. The other one is we would still have to have a stairwell. If we want to put people on the 4th and 5th floor, we would still have to have a second stairwell on the other side. And yes, they are not in the plans. I believe it was discussed that that's what the plan was, but they were not in the current plans. The current plans are called 95%, which means we still have room to make adjustments in them. And that's what we've got to do. You know, it's gonna take some time to get everything. The plans are not complete. We have to go through and make sure they're complete. And make sure any changes that we want to do. If we don't want to put people on the fourth and fifth floors, that's fine. But we can't, and that way we don't have to spend to put stairwells in. But that doesn't make good use of those spaces.
All I'm saying. Quit giving me guesstimates. Let's go out for bids
For the whole shebang.
for the whole shebang. Let's tell me what it's gonna cost so we can tell the people.
Okay.
So that you don't get in the middle of it and, 2 years from now, if something happens and you don't get reelected, then we got a courthouse here that's all tore up and nobody knows what it's gonna cost to get it all done.
So in order to go out and get bids, we have to get the architecture drawings completed. And so what I'm hearing you say is, yes, we go ahead and accept the grant. Is that what I hear you're saying?
That my opinion on that hadn't changed from last time. I asked you to find out what are our obligations if we accept that grant.
Okay,
If we accept that grant and it sits there and our handshake agreement sits there until we find out what the rest of this gonna cost. Right now, yeah, I'm all for the grant,
okay,
but whenever I find out 6 months from now how much it's gonna cost, and we go to the voters for a bond and they say no, then I'm gonna have to tell the state of Texas, I'm sorry, I wanted to do this, but it didn't go the way I thought it was gonna be.
okay.
The voting public doesn't want it. Doesn't want to spend it.
Well, you can accept the grant or you cannot, I don't know the time frame. Okay, we have orientation webinar on the 22nd. Now, I may be able to get that answer for you this afternoon. James Mulanafi, who is our contact with THC, just so happens that he was at a Kaufman County meeting today and he's gonna be stopping by here. And I can ask him that. One, how long? I believe it's 90 days before we have to let them know whether or not we're gonna accept the grant. And then I believe, preliminary, what I've read is you have to start construction within a year. But what I don't know is if you accept the grant, can you decline to go forward? But we still have to spend money on architect to finish up the plans.
We budgeted for that, didn't we?
We have money in the current year's public buildings that could be used for that. But I don't know that I could get it done by September 30th. But we can try.
I thought that we'd already set money aside for our architect to get done that. Another thing on that 12 million reserve, that whole 12 million is not available. 6 million, that's what we got.
That's right.
That only leaves you with 6. And you can't kind of spend all 6 of that. That would get you in a bind. And that's where my concern is. If you try to self-finance it, don't get me wrong, 9.5 is a big difference in the 3 million they first offered. That's a lot better than the 6 million they offered a second time. 9.5, if you can actually do this for 12 million, it would be improper for us to turn it down. It's just too good a deal.
But
I think our concern is, one, we want to know we can do it for 12. We want to see an RFP come back in here with a contractor saying, yes, I can do this at 12, or no, it's going to take 15 or 18. So we know exactly what we're looking at. And the other concern here is, even if it does come in at 12, you got $6 million in reserve to work with, you can't use all it. It's kind of going to be hard to fund the project on a reimbursement process when you only got a few $1,000,000 to try to do the stuff with. That's another concern I have. I think you're going to need I think the bond would be the best option. You could set that back and you could pay out the bond, and when reimbursement comes in, it goes back to the bond. And if you come in within your within your budget amount here, you pay the bond off. And you're gonna draw interest on it the whole time anyway. But I feel like to try to secure this project with reserve funds is gonna wind up getting you in a bind. And I really feel like what we really need to go forward with now is we need that locked in. This is what this project's gonna cost. That way we know what we're working at. Right now, we have an estimate, which we just discussed, doesn't include 2 floors of project. And the estimate we have is so close to the one Tim originally had back in 2021, prior to Bidenomics. I don't feel like that $12 million estimate is going to hold true. I would like to actually get an RFP in here and somebody saying we could do it for this much and get them on a contract before we get too much further into it. That way we know where we're at and if it's feasible or not. If this thing comes back at 24 million, then it's back to, is that 9.5 really beneficial? If it comes back in at 12, it's like, let's run. That makes sense.
Makes total sense.
We gotta have the number, not, I think it can, or I guess it can, it might can.
And you have to say an architect that come out and look at how long would it take for him to finish that design up, so we'd have a chance to put it out. I know the other day, this is something that we had a 90-day window to accept. And could we get an extension on that?
Well, we've already paid $450,000 for these plans. You wouldn't think we'd owe too much more.
Well, I thought that was, that's why I thought that was complete.
I thought they were too. That's the first I've heard that they want complete plans. Have you ever heard that, Tim? I thought that when we got those, they're ready to go.
It says on the documents that they provided us 95% complete.
What's missing?
Well, that's what they say on all of them. I mean, that's not.
Is to give you the opportunity to make changes before you actually start the building process.
Do they have the stairwells and the offices?
No,
No,
no, none of that.
So
they have the up, they have those 2 floors.
Plan drawn, it's their, not ones that were sent to us and approved. Down what they want to have, there were any. And it comes, the staircase comes down right outside of where the courthouse, the courtroom door is. And it opens into the hallway upstairs, and that's where it comes down right there.
So can we use those plans?
That's
That's my next
Well-
question. What was submitted then? Do we gotta stay with what was submitted?
Well,
no, you can change
No, you can
the
change.
plans. You just have to get approval from the historical commission to change the plans.
So we do have an accurate set of plans. Minus the 4th and 5th floor, we definitely get a price on the original plan.
Now, you could use the 4th floor. The way the plans are drawn, because you do have 2 exits out of it. One comes down into the,
Jury room.
room with the jury. You do have that, but also things in there, got it. So the other one, where it came down, it was gonna take out 1 or 2 of those offices that are there now, but you use all the way up to the 5th floor. Right. And if the way they had it drawn, and I don't know what the plan is, but it was leaving 2 of the jail cells up on the 5th floor to show as an example of how the jail used to be. The rest of it was being use.
Removed all the bars.
and another thing that causes me, this is going to the Texas Historical Commission that approved these plans the way we submitted them. So how do we know if we go and start altering those 2 floors up there, that the Texas Historical Commission is going to approve what we want to do? Because it's a historical building. They may not approve what we want to do. They've approved the plans to give us this grant, what we turned in. So now we're gonna come back and say, time out now, you approved these plans, but now we want to give you, we don't want to do these plans, we want to do plans to do something different. How do you know they're not gonna say, I'm sorry? That's not what you turned in. We based our decision off what you turned in. So, I mean, how do you get in the middle of the game and change the rules?
Tim, you said we do have plans for that.
There must have been some places.
So
But that's not what we turned in. That's not what we turned in.
What was approved?
They're in addition to what we turned in. There are 2 more floors above what we turned in. We turned in 3 floors.
I understand, but that's not what they approved. They approved this grant.
I don't think that, I think that we're getting. Unless you're gonna do something really goofy, but I think that, you know, making those 2 floors usable, I think it makes sense to them to.
Well, you gotta go back to saying, like she just said, Tim, you think they would approve it. It's kind of like the money, we gotta know before we
Yeah.
we move on.
You said James was coming up here today?
Yeah.
Talk to him about it.
It sounds like we already have plans in hand to do the 3 floors or do the all 5 floors. We already have plans. So
All we gotta do is get them, the ones that weren't approved.
we could send out the RFP with the 3 floors and then an additional 2 floors for additional prices. So we know what our price is either way.
Yes, sir.
We would still need an architect to be involved to make any changes, and they would be the ones that would work with the putting together the RFP. Because they do this, there's still costs to be incurred in order to get to this point. Get to the point of knowing what the bid costs are gonna be.
Well, if we use the drawings that's here and we let them build the RFP, there's a chance we can have an answer before the end of October, so we know what we're looking at.
States already approved the plans that is presented, they're approved. So you can take it from there, get a bid, and then even if you have to change it, you can come back and reapply to them for the change, or you can talk to James about it now. He can tell you if it was working or not, these ones are approved.
But you won't have your true cost if you don't have the final plan.
Well, no, you won't.
Well, what are we gonna change off what they've approved?
Build stairwells.
Well, he's got a second set of plans that has
There's a
theirs.
set of plans someplace in there that shows that.
They haven't been approved.
No, I understand.
So we'll have, that's what I'm saying, let your contractor quote what's been approved and then quote as an addition these other 2 floors. So we got a good idea what's gonna cost us. We'll know what it's gonna cost for what's been approved, we'll know what the additional is gonna cost. And that way your architects should be able to build your RFP and get it out in time to get us something back. In time to accept this thing.
It's kind of example, we're trying to go buy a car. And we don't even have a job, don't even know what we're making yet.
Okay, I will put together more information and come back to you with what we can and can't do. At another budget workshop we'll include it in the August 14th.
You know, that would work, but it's gotta be pretty quick. And once you make that decision, it's gonna take a while to get the appraiser, get the architect to finish his plans and get a bid out.
It's not gonna happen by October 1st, I can tell you that.
Well, then we're gonna lose our grant.
Or if you lose the grant, then you don't have to worry about it.
That's right.
Well, I had it towards the end of October.
So we're gonna give up
When-
9.5 million because unsurety or the
Absolutely.
Yeah, 'cause it could cost us 20.
If you can't tell me what it's gonna cost, I'm gonna lose my 9.5 million.
Yeah.
If you'll rock and roll and tell me what it's gonna cost, I'll push it and help you all I can.
So we go back in 20 years and tell the voters, we're gonna now spend 20 million, have to spend 20 million. We will never get another grant if we don't.
You try to
accept it.
sit
Yeah, we won't ever get another grant from the historical commission.
That's Andy, the other day, it was looking like 90 days out, that's the end of October, we got a 3-month window here. to put out an RFP, get it back and know what we're looking at. We got a window here to do this,
I agree.
I think we do too, but you're gonna have.
but we
to-
can't delay. You're gonna have to move on.
Yeah,
But the RFP goes to a whole bunch of different people. It's not that simple, and we can't do it without somebody doing the professional drawings to get out.
I thought we had professional drawings.
That's what we sent down.
What'd we pay $450,000 for if we don't have a professional drawing? Sir?
we have the professional drawings,
Yes.
we don't have the professional drawings that's been approved to have a staircase coming down from the fifth to the fourth floor. That's the only thing you're gonna have.
I say forget that fifth and fourth floor and let's get us a bid on what the state of Texas approved to give us a grant on and see what that's gonna cost. Before you lose your $9.5 million over trying to put some,
Yeah,
so what
2
or 3 desks up there.
You could accept that. Need to get your number, but you could accept that. Before you actually start construction. Apply to them to change it where you can have the stairs coming down from the fifth floor to the fourth. Make that useful.
yes.
Well, then we won't know the cost.
I'll know what the cost of what you've turned in is gonna be, Andy.
Yeah. You know what you got right now.
Right.
Are they gonna give you any more grant money if they add the fourth and fifth?
No, we're capped out at $9.5 million.
Then we know what it's gonna cost to do what we asked to do. And we can submit plans later for that additional, and decide if we wanna pay for that additional or not.
That's right.
That's correct.
But you'll get done what you set out to do.
That's correct. You'll get a restored courthouse. It might not have office spaces in the fourth and fifth floor, but you'll get a new courthouse.
You cap them in the fourth.
You can cut in that jail stairway on the
Yeah.
fourth floor
Yeah.
and get you your 2 sets of stairs. And use your elevator as your primary access. No, we got drawings for that, right?
Somewhere they are. I don't know. I can't tell you where they are now. Yeah, we have.
Nothing's been thrown away. I know where they're all located. I just have to look and see. If they're delineated as different from each other.
Yeah.
Because there's about 4 sets of them.
I say we go out for bids for exactly the plans we got right now and tell me what it's gonna cost.
That way we can get the ball rolling and get started on what we asked to do. And then we can work out the above and beyond. We gotta pay for that anyway.
All right. I'll get with everybody and find out if we can get it done that quickly, or ask them how to get it done that quickly. Anything else on the courthouse? All right, we want to move on to jail?
On the jail. Alright, we've talked to 2 architects about a jail, 2 different options. One is a whole new facility, which is a justice center, which I don't think is feasible right now. And I don't think this court thinks it's feasible. So we talked to the architect who did the jail that we have now. We talked to him yesterday and gave him, there were some plans that Virgil came up with during COVID. When y'all were talking about using the ARPA funds for that, there were some plans for that. I found them and I showed him, and he had done them. And it's a base for what it is, and then, but it's not for what we need right now. I talked to Joe and Kevin yesterday, and me and Chad were in there. And we want to try to get a 299 bed facility. And we can do it by adding on. We don't have to build a new one. We can do it by adding on. And that would include everything that Sheriff and Kevin said yesterday. It'd be, we would want 5 padded cells, 2 restraint cells, 60 federal beds, 40 for women, and 20 mental facilities instead of 10. And we can do it by using the north side of the jail. There's enough room back there to get that facility to 299. And that's we can't get 300 because then you gotta get a medical staff, but 299 was our limit, it was doable. He did not come up with a price. We just started talking about it because we're gonna need a jail. And I think us as a court need to figure out, we got a courthouse, we got a jail, we wanna do both. How do we wanna go about doing this? We're just in the first stages of this. But he did give out a number, which means nothing, kind of like the courthouse, of around 8 million. Is what he said the new would cost. That's not including refurbishing the old. Couldn't give us a price on that. You gotta go in there and look at that. But I think we need to start looking at a jail. I mean, we're housing everybody out now, and just with the feds alone, if we had 60 beds, that would generate, what was it, $497,000 a month? If we get the feds to contract that. This is all hypothetical. But that jail could generate money and pay for some of it. And we'd also be able to function instead of just being overcrowded and just outsourcing. But we need to think about a jail. And I guess we've had 2 meetings, and I don't think a new one is feasible, but I do think we're gonna have to add on sometime. We got quit kicking the can down the road and get it done. And then we'll have to be by a bond. And we also talked about adding an animal shelter with it, because the county has no animal shelter. And so that's what we've talked about. I don't have how much it's gonna cost. But we need to get the ball rolling on it, I think.
One thing about this add-on design, it allows us to stay on our current property. We got room to the north of the building to add on to the jail and create this number of beds. And if we do an animal shelter, there's room on the other side of the communications tower for that. So we can do it without having to purchase property. That'll save a chunk of money. So
But do we go and give the architect what we want, and he can design it? He gives us the cost, and then we try to sell to the public for a bond election. I mean,
But you said you had drawings, right?
we have the drawings that Virgil had pre-COVID, but it's not.
Architectural drawing.
Yes, it's the architect, but it's not, we'd be adding 107 beds. And I don't believe those drawings.
They are, but they're very preliminary. Then Virgil didn't pay anybody to do this, but he did go to Gary Adams and say, sketch me up something that I can take back to the court.
Yeah.
But we didn't have any money left out of COVID after our radio. That was back when COVID dollars were really defined on where it had to go. And so we looked, Virgil took that on to get that, just preliminary stuff, and it's nothing,
Right.
nothing with no
Yeah.
architect stamp on it.
yeah,
Nothing that you can go after. Yes, yes. Yes, sir. And so, I mean, I agree, and it's the same way with this building. We've got to have some numbers in it. I'm all for going into a contract with who is it, DRG because I don't think you'll get anybody to do it any cheaper than them, because they know that building. Yeah, that's their building. And so I don't believe you can find anybody to do it any cheaper. So I'm for budgeting some money to let them give us some ideas.
didn't we put 120,000 in the budget for architectural work? During that last workshop, did that make it in the 25 here? 100.
Yeah.
So,
But this will have to go to the people. But we've got to get started and
Is that in public buildings? Where is that located?
non-department,
Where?
non-department.
Non-department, okay.
That money be available October first. That gives you a couple of months to kind of brainstorm what your design, what you want to see in it, how ready to give them.
but I think both issues need to go to the people. They need to know what's going on.
Need to
Exactly.
schedule a public hearing now.
Once you get an idea of what you want to build, you got your drawings, everything you look at.
No, and I think he's talking about going to the people for a bond, to borrow the money on the bond. I'll fight you tooth and nail on certificate of obligations. That's what happened in this county 10 years ago. And for the most part, nobody can tell me where the $8 million went. And because whoever was sitting behind this bench borrowed $8 million without voter approval. That's ridiculous.
I think you should have not only for the bond, but maybe a public hearing, even before you get these. Get the, of course, you probably do need the numbers. Just let them know what is going on.
Well,
I guess they can watch YouTube.
we're planning to do a town hall meeting with the sheriff. And that would be a good time to discuss it, bring it out. So we'll just have to figure out when that would be, when we can do that. And thinking that we needed to do it before school starts, but I don't know, we have time to put it together that quickly, so.
I can get up and talk about it today.
Yeah. Well, we got to plan it, promote it. And make sure we get everybody there, it can be there, so let me work on a time frame on that.
Just to provide the presentation of Mike Barker. He brought a verdict for 20 best school in the city and the country. Day, week, month. And it's all falling this way. They're growing to the west of us, it's growing to the north and west of us. It's gonna sprawl out this way also, it's a matter of when it comes, how big it gets here. And it's showing wow, that's appreciate y'all, please take the time to look at this, resident.
Yeah.
The jail's
I'd love to go build a new complex. That's what we need to do. I just don't know if we're gonna get there either, but we need to look at what's the best way to go. And I'd also look at refurbishing that jail because we're prepared back to run into, again, we had to replace one of the jail doors destroyed by an inmate. It's been kicked, what's called mule kick, they'll stand in the back door, kick on it. These are heavy steel doors, jail doors. Basically, broke the door, just blow the lock. Door right into two, we had to replace it. $14,000 for one door and about 20 weeks replacement time for it. It's one door.
Yeah. And that technology is out of date and all our
Yes.
issues.
The locking mechanisms in the store, the parts we kind of just worn out.
Did we file on that inmate?
What are you gonna file?
He tore up property. He should,
So you can keep them there longer, right?
yes, sir. That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
He shipped off the TDC about, it's been several months ago, but he was in our facility for probably close to 2 years.
But if you file on him, he'll be in TDC longer.
It'll run current. Usually, it's what they want.
And this should last us. The jail standards, I believe, I don't have the numbers on me. I think it was 254 beds. And that was good. That was estimated to be good through 2042 or 45. And with 299, that should last us 25 years. 25 to 30 years.
But they're designated metroplex, I just looked at what they're calling metroplex now, and it includes Kaufman County, it's what they're designated. In Greenville, Hunt County, part of the metroplex, what they're calling the metroplex area now. So we're right on the border of that, it's coming this way quickly, and it's just a matter of economy. With all those folks taking down the road, next to it, race.
Just that last week, 41,000 registered voters.
In Van Zandt County?
Yes. So, all right. So. We wanna follow up next week. You want me to schedule a budget workshop to follow through on this, and I'll put together some numbers, or is that too close?
Quicker the better for you.
Depends on if you want that $9.5 million.
Do,
All right, well, I'll figure it out by Friday, so.
One more thing. The press conference is done, case was one PD got to be a subject, gentleman with gold. That's not just a fluke. That's not just a fluke, this goes on day and night. Pretty far, they said they could leak past years.
All right,
on the jail, did we decide to move forward and get some plans? I mean, I know we didn't vote on it, but.
It's not budgeted until October
we-
1st.
We can't do it till October the 1st, but we want to go ahead and do that. So we can go ahead and continue the conversations.
yeah, and do we go with Gary? I mean, is it we get a proposal from Gary on what it's gonna cost to do that, or do we go out on bid?
I think you get them, they know that jail. That's my opinion.
It's my opinion.
All right. I'll put something together, run by, see,
Joe, you and Kevin be, thinking about ideas and, cause Gary called me this morning, I'll tell him we'll meet with him, you know, maybe beginning of September and kind of get some plans to get together, what we need, what we want.
And getting more land was needed, that also, that field right across there, where your parking lot, used for parking. Our parking lot, you go out there today, we're gonna keep parking over the grass, rock. The parking lot pretty full, so expansion still needs parking, the city can't has a property right across there. Backs behind the library, it's certainly better too.
okay. All right,
I talk about Joe all day long.
I know, that's why I'm.
That's it.
All right, anything else? All right, I'm gonna call this meeting closed at 11:50. Thank you very much, gentlemen and ladies. Where?